Welcome to the Faculty Exchange. I am Dr. Dash. I am a professor of law and accounting, and we are here today with distinguished professors from the Fenimore Fisher College of Business, and we are going to tackle trade policy and tariffs and how the U.S. administration is changing them and shaping global markets. Okay, Dr. Crawford, to you first. Go ahead and tell us what are kind of the long and short-term impacts of U.S. tariff policy?
The challenge that we have right now is that the tariff policies are evolving. And every day you go to the news and you find out more and more about the tariff policies. I think what's happening is that the intent of the Trump administration is really to box in China with the tariff policy. So what he's done is he's implementing tariffs across the board, and with the intent that we'll have trade partners align with the U.S., and then eventually, as the trade partners align with the U.S., it will isolate China from world trade.
Yeah, but China is such a large economy on its own. Isolating China is not going to be a permanent impact. Short term is that it is affecting so much of the small businesses within the United States because tariffs is a tax. So yes, who is paying those taxes? And so once you're increasing the input prices, the output prices are going to increase. And who is that being passed on to? The U.S. consumers. So the short-term impact is that prices are going to go up. And if prices are going to go up, then inflation is going to go up and all the other factors that's going to go with it. I understand that the intent is to put a squeeze on China is to allow them to pay more. But for the short term, I think the U.S. consumers is feeling more of it.
I agree with your short-term impact. I do think that there is an impact, or the intent is to box in China a little bit, since it is a global power that's rising and competing much more with the United States. But I also think the number one thing is to try to get closer to a balance of trade with all countries, because the United States has been the largest market by far.
Yes.
In the last 40 years or so. By boxing that in and by trying to get that balance of trade more even, the attempt is to bring more production into the United States and to guard against a lot of manufacturing and sources from elsewhere being able to provide a product cheaper to the United States. Now, I agree the short term, at least, it's going to be painful. There's no doubt.
Sure, but even if you're moving manufacturing, if the intent is to get more manufacturing into the United States, it takes a while to build plant and machinery and everything that goes along with that. So the intermediary piece of it, the short-term and the long-term impact of it is that it is going to take time. So if you're coming with a tariff policy, that's good, but it needs to be more stable. There's too much helter-skelter going, it's up, it's down. If it's more stable, I think that the jolt on the economy will be less of an impact than it is, because right now the short-term and the impact, it's a significant swing.
And I think that, President Trump has taken the stance to go hard, right? And that's sort of his approach to many things. And so he is trying to get this reaction also from the markets. So trying to open that up into a discussion. So I think that in a sense, I see how right now we have this uncertainty, but thinking on the long term, because President Trump is in the House for 4 years, and then who's next? And what is going to be their policy on this? Because I agree that the consistency of this approach could eventually lead to something positive, whereas right now we have this short-term impact of increased prices and so forth. But it's going to be an effort of how do we make this sustainable into the future. So that intentional planning that can be passed on and that different parties can buy into, because we see the pendulum always tends to swing. And so that's also a question that I think remains open, and that legislators and future administrations need to think about, because there is an opening that is happening here. It's a shock, but past the 4 years, what else can be there to sustain this.
We got to get
Yeah.
through this year
Yes.
before we start
Well, that
worrying.
is true too.
Before we start worrying about
Yeah,
4 years away.
exactly.
I think one of the
Yeah.
challenges right now is the question of what are we really trying to accomplish? Because the question is,
goal?
is it a tariff? Is it supposed to be a revenue stream, or are we doing it for reciprocity?
Yes.
And so the president up to this point has talked about both. He talks about, well, we're bringing in all this revenue into the country through tariffs, and at the same time, he's also saying, well, what we need to do is seek reciprocity.
Yes.
And if we're seeking reciprocity, what's going to happen is, I think eventually our trade partners are going to get on board and they'll agree with that because they'll see that as just trying to make trade fair.
Yes.
If we go to our trade partners and we're doing it to increase a revenue stream,
Yes.
the trade partners are going to see that as what you're trying to do is you're trying to take advantage
Yes,
of us.
yes.
And so we won't have the cooperation from our trade partners going forward.
Yes.
And I think that's an interesting point because coming from a Latin American perspective, I see where China has made strong advancements into foreign policy and gaining influence through foreign investments in Latin America. That taking advantage sense, right? And so I think that we had a deal just recently between China and the U.S. But then what happened right after that? China goes to talk to Latin American presidents and tells them we are not about tyranny, taking advantage of you guys, implying that the U.S. is.
Yeah.
And so that, especially in emerging markets, that's going to be something that needs to be tactfully navigated as well from the government and the diplomacy perspective so that we don't land into this space.
Yeah.
But instead, we take opportunity to, there is this shock, but even in this shock, how can we facilitate positive change for all parties?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So do you feel like there are enough skilled workers here for them to actually bring back the manufacturing, or how long do you think that process would take?
Wow, I think that it's not whether or not we have skilled workers in the United States. We do have the skilled workers. Right. Can we afford to pay those skilled workers?
That's exactly right.
It's a cost.
Well,
it's a cost that's involved.
Not only afford to pay those skilled
Yeah.
workers, it's what's the cost of the product then once you pay the higher wages.
There you go, because the labor cost is part of the input prices. Their benefits is part of the input prices, your cost of goods sold. So now you made a product. Are there American consumers willing to pay that cost for that product? And if they're not willing to pay the cost, it's not build it and they will come. Is we're going to make a product, but no one is interested. The cost is too much. The input price is too much to give an output price for you to have a benefit of it. But we do have labor. We do have skilled labor in the U.S.
Labor.
We do have
What about
the labor.
How long would it take then to set up the manufacturing, get the laborers in there and trained, and go ahead and run with it? Because if like you were saying, tariff policy is changing. If it's stable for a while, then we can go ahead and create the manufacturing and move forward. Do you have kind of an estimate for how long it would take to create all of that?
I would say 5 to 10 years.
It's a long time.
So 5 to 10 years to even build the factory, or maybe longer than 10 years to bring in the actual labor force, or to get American mindset to be willing to pay more for the product. Is made in America, is it better? You have to change the mindset of consumers, because everything is driven by consumer sentiments. If we're optimistic about an American product, we will pay more for an American product.
I think one of the things, when I look at manufacturing, one of the things that's happened in the U.S. in the last 30 years is we've lost our capabilities.
That's true.
And as a result of that, the average age of people in manufacturing, the manufacturing workforce, the average age is 39 years old.
Wow.
And so we've got an older workforce that's currently working in manufacturing. We're not training the younger generation to go into manufacturing. We've eliminated things like shop class and those type of things, and as a result of that, I think we have a capability issue that we have to deal with too.
Thank you, Dr. Crawford. Wow, that was some great discussion. We've got a lot more to discuss, and we'll be right back.